The Ice Cream Paradox: How American Abundance Shattered Japan's War Ideology. Extended Edition. June 20th, 1944. Aboard the USS Enterprise in the Philippine Sea, Lieutenant Junior Grade Saburo Kitamura of the Imperial Japanese Navy found himself in the enlisted mess hall. His hands trembled as he stared at a tray piled with more food than his entire squadron had shared in 3 days. Fried chicken, mashed potatoes swimming in butter, green beans, white bread, apple pie, and a glass of cold milk. The American sailor working the serving line, impatient with the delay, simply gestured towards a station and asked, "You want chocolate or vanilla?" The question struck Kitamura with profound, destabilizing absurdity. Ice cream was a fantasy at sea. It demanded refrigeration that no combat vessel could justify or spare. Yet here, on America's most battle-hardened aircraft carrier, an enemy prisoner was being offered a choice of frozen desserts. Kitamura had been rescued from the Philippine Sea just hours earlier, one of 43 Japanese airmen recovered during the massive engagement known as the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. He expected summary execution, or at best, slow starvation and torture. Japanese propaganda had been explicit for years. Americans were barbarians who ate their prisoners, decadent devils who delighted in the suffering of their enemies. Instead, Navy medical corpsmen had expertly treated his severe wounds, provided him with morphine for pain, and now they offered him a choice of ice cream flavors. That moment, the simple choice between chocolate or vanilla became a psychological anchor that haunted him for decades. It was the moment his fundamental understanding of the war, of America, and of the unshakable spiritual superiority of Japan began to crumble into dust. The mathematics of abundance versus austerity. Across the Pacific War, an estimated 35,000 Japanese military personnel would experience American naval captivity. This proximity to the enemy revealed an operational abundance that utterly destroyed everything they had been taught about their enemy's perceived weakness and decadence. They discovered carriers where enlisted sailors ate better than Japanese fleet admirals, where automated machinery produced fresh water from seawater in unlimited quantities, and where ice cream machines operated continuously, churning out frozen desserts despite the ongoing brutality of combat operations. These first-hand encounters with American naval logistics would demolish the spiritual foundations of Japanese military ideology, the Yamato Spirit, which prioritized spiritual fortitude over material resources, far more thoroughly than any single defeat on the battlefield. The contrast between the two navies was stark, a gap measured in calories and logistical capabilities. The Japanese sailors' diet. Japanese sailors subsisted primarily on rice balls and pickled vegetables. By 1944, when supplies were actually available, enlisted men received only about 1,400 calories daily. Protein was scarce, mainly sourced from fish caught when boats could spare fuel for fishing. Vitamin deficiency was endemic. Beriberi, scurvy, and night blindness were common afflictions plaguing the crews. The American sailors' diet, by contrast, consumed an average of 4,100 calories daily of varied, fresh, and preserved foods. Their rations included fresh meat daily, frozen vegetables, freshly baked bread, dairy products, eggs for breakfast, and multiple beverage options. Naval records show that large carrier mess halls served approximately 15,000 meals daily, with menus rotating through dozens of options, ensuring that variety was maintained even in the remote Pacific. The psychological impact of a simple coffee and a missing donut. The psychological impact began the instant survivors were brought aboard American vessels. Commander Mitsuo Fuchida, the pilot who had masterminded the devastating attack on Pearl Harbor, was one such survivor rescued in 1945 aboard the USS Missouri. Fuchida, who later converted to Christianity and dedicated his life to reconciliation, documented his initial jarring experience. "They hauled me up like a caught fish, and I prepared for death. Instead, a medical officer examined my injuries, while a sailor brought real coffee, hot, with sugar and cream. I hadn't tasted coffee since 1942. The sailor then made a casual apology that the ship was temporarily out of donuts. This offhand, trivial mention of a depleted luxury supply, occurring while desperate Japanese forces were known to be subsisting on whatever they could scavenge, tree bark, leather belts, or worse, immediately highlighted the immense, unsustainable gulf between the two powers. It was a reality check. Their enemy was not just materially superior, they operated on a completely different scale of existence. Luxury beneath the waves. The shock deepened when Japanese prisoners were allowed to see the enlisted men's living and operating conditions. Petty Officer Kazuo Sakamaki, captured from a midget submarine at Pearl Harbor, became America's first Japanese POW. He later wrote about his astonishment at American submarine facilities. The enemy submarines had showers with hot water. The crews slept in bunks with mattresses and clean sheets. They had a library of books and magazines. The mess hall had a coffee urn that never emptied. They lived better underwater than we lived on land. Japanese ships driven by austerity sacrificed comfort for combat readiness. American vessels understood that morale and rest were integral to fighting power. Fresh water and laundry, precious beyond measure. The logistical reality of fresh water was perhaps the most telling disparity. On Japanese ships, where men often went weeks without bathing, fresh water was precious and severely restricted. Yet on American carriers, fresh water flowed freely for laundry, cleaning, and frequent showers. The evaporators on the USS Enterprise alone could produce an astonishing 140,000 gallons of fresh water daily. This single ship capacity exceeded the combined freshwater production of the entire Japanese carrier fleet. American carriers were equipped with industrial washing machines, dryers, and pressing equipment. Enlisted sailors received clean uniforms twice weekly. Japanese sailors were forced to wash their clothes in seawater, a practice that quickly ruined the fabric and offered little sanitation. The ice cream fleet and the combat rations. The presence of ice cream machines delivered a particularly devastating psychological impact. The Japanese Navy considered ice cream impossible at sea, a needless luxury requiring resources no dedicated combat vessel could justify or spare. Yet here, on America's most battle-hardened aircraft carrier, an enemy prisoner was being offered a choice of frozen desserts. The ice cream plant on the USS Lexington could produce 500 gallons daily. Concrete barges were converted into specialized ice cream vessels, capable of producing 5,000 gallons per shift for fleet consumption. Japanese prisoners watched in disbelief as American damage control parties, men who had just spent hours fighting fires and flooding after a kamikaze attack, received ice cream sundaes as battle rations. This cognitive dissonance was overwhelming. Their nation, fighting for its existence, could not provide basic protein. The enemy, supposedly soft and decadent, gave its sailors ice cream during combat. The abundance didn't weaken them, it fueled their fight.